Prince Baldwin, the future king of Jerusalem, was suffering from leprosy.
For centuries, King Baldwin IV's illness has been one of the darkest medical mysteries in medieval history.
In 1183, as Baldwin's the ability to walk unsupported and use his hands, he can't use his hands.
His body decayed in ways no doctor could explain. He stopped feeling pain even when his skin tore open or his bones were injured. His death raised rumors of burial while still alive.
Baldwin III was poisoned by his Syrian Orthodox doctor and died childless in 1163.
Now, after a hidden tomb was opened and forbidden samples were tested, scientists have uncovered the truth. What they found is more disturbing, more unnatural and more shocking than anything recorded at the time. The horrifying early symptoms nobody understood. The first signs of Baldwin's strange illness began when he was only a child, and they were terrifying. The young prince would fall hard on stone floors or scrape his skin against sharp walls, and he would show no reaction at all. Other boys would scream or cry from the same injuries, but Baldwin stood still with a blank face. His tutors became uneasy because they could not understand how a child could take such hits without even a small flinch. It looked unnatural, and it made the adults around him fear that something was very wrong inside his body. Servants began to notice blood on his sleeves, on his legs, and on his hands long after playtime ended. They often found deep cuts that Baldwin never mentioned because he never felt them. These untreated wounds became swollen and infected because no one saw them until they had already grown worse. His tutor, William of Tyre, later wrote that Baldwin once touched hot metal and burned his skin badly. Baldwin did not pull away and did not scream. He kept working as if nothing had happened. This frightened everyone because even grown men could not endure that kind of pain. The palace physicians gathered to study Baldwin, but they had no idea what they were looking at. Medical knowledge during this time was very limited. When they saw a child who could not feel pain, they believed the cause had to be something supernatural. Some doctors whispered that Baldwin might be touched by dark forces. Others thought the royal family was cursed and that this curse was showing itself through the boy's strange body. A few believed God was punishing the kingdom. None of their explanations made sense, but they were all desperate to understand what they were seeing. Priests were quietly brought to examine Baldwin. They performed prayers and small exorcism rites because they feared that the child's body was rejecting normal sensation and that something unholy might be influencing him. Baldwin's mother became terrified that someone would accuse her of giving birth to a cursed child. She immediately ordered all servants to stay silent about anything they saw. Anyone who spoke could face severe punishment. The palace tried to hide every bruise, every burn, and every infected wound. As Baldwin grew older, he began to feel strange tingling in his fingers and arms. Doctors said this was a sign that his nerves were dying, but they still had no idea why. They believed leprosy caused numbness, but Baldwin's symptoms did not grow in the same pattern as early leprosy cases. His strange condition did not match any known disease from that time. This created the first part of the mystery. A prince who could not feel pain was something no one had ever seen before. His symptoms had no clear cause, and this terrified everyone around him. And everything got worse when a sudden tragedy struck the kingdom. The palace cover-up that changed Crusader history. The tragedy that struck the kingdom was the death of King Amalric I. His sudden loss sent shockwaves through Jerusalem. Amalric was not only the ruling monarch but also Baldwin's father, the man who kept the kingdom stable during years of non-stop conflict. He controlled powerful nobles, balanced fragile alliances, and protected Jerusalem from constant military threats. His leadership held everything together, which made his death even more devastating. Chroniclers wrote that Amalric fell violently ill during a military campaign. He developed severe stomach sickness that progressed quickly, and many historians believe he died from dysentery, a common and often fatal disease in army encampments. With Amalric gone, the political structure he built collapsed almost immediately. Because Baldwin was Amalric's eldest surviving son, the throne passed directly to him. This made Baldwin the rightful heir, even though he was only a boy and already suffering from an unexplained illness that no one could diagnose. Many nobles feared what this would mean for the future of the kingdom. These nobles thought a prince who could not feel pain would make the kingdom look weak. They believed the enemies of Jerusalem would attack the moment they learned the new king had a body that was slowly breaking down. Because of this fear, several factions tried to block Baldwin from becoming king. They whispered that he was too sick to rule and that the throne should go to another member of the royal family. Baldwin's mother refused to allow anyone to question her son's right to rule. She worked with her allies to produce false reports that claimed Baldwin was strong and healthy. They hid the real medical notes written by William of Tyre because these notes described Baldwin's alarming symptoms. The priests argued about Baldwin as well. Many believed any sign of leprosy was a sign of divine punishment. This raised a serious question. Should a kingdom built on Christian beliefs allow a possible leper to rule? Some priests said that allowing Baldwin to reign would anger God. Others argued that rejecting a rightful heir would bring even greater disaster. Inside the palace, the doctors held secret meetings. They argued about how fast Baldwin's illness might grow and whether he would live long enough to rule as an adult. Some believed he could survive for years. Others believed he could die at any moment. These disagreements created more fear. Rivals within the kingdom used this fear to spread rumors that the royal bloodline was cursed. They wanted people to think Baldwin's sickness proved that God had abandoned his family. They hoped these rumors would push people to support a different successor. Several nobles threatened to refuse loyalty unless the palace explained the truth about Baldwin's health. This put the royal family in danger. If they admitted Baldwin was sick, the nobles could overthrow him. If they continued lying, the kingdom could split apart. The palace decided to hide everything. Baldwin was kept away from large gatherings so people would not notice his worsening symptoms. His mother ordered him to show perfect strength in every public appearance. Once Baldwin learned about the secret discussions surrounding him, he felt he had to prove he was capable of ruling. He began training harder than the healthy knights. He pushed himself through exhaustion so that no one could accuse him of being weak. Meanwhile, the royal medical staff began lying in official records. If the church confirmed Baldwin had leprosy, they could demand he be removed from the city. Lepers were normally expelled because people feared infection. Despite these efforts, the rumors continued to grow. Citizens whispered that the future king was unclean, cursed, or chosen for punishment. The kingdom became tense, uneasy, and divided. As Baldwin finally began ruling, his condition worsened in strange and frightening ways that no doctor could explain. The rotten flesh paradox that terrified medieval physicians. The first alarming change appeared in his hands. His fingers began curling inward, stiffening into claw-like shapes that showed severe nerve and muscle damage. Classical leprosy causes nerve degeneration, but not at this speed. Baldwin's condition advanced far faster than anything described in the medical manuals kept at monasteries and hospitals. The deformities appeared before his teenage years, which terrified his physicians because typical leprosy deformities takes decades. Open sores soon appeared on Baldwin's hands and feet. These ulcers leaked fluids, developed thick crusts, and emitted a strong, foul smell the attendants struggled to clean. Some sores deepened into pits, exposing raw flesh beneath. Medieval treatments like wine-soaked bandages, herbal pastes, and heated metal instruments barely slowed the progression. The ulcers healed slower than expected, then reopened for no clear reason. His wounds resisted treatments and behaved differently from the lesions seen in standard leprosy cases. As the disease advanced, Baldwin's face began showing disturbing structural changes. Cartilage in his nose weakened, causing partial collapse. Areas of numb skin across his forehead and cheeks turned either very pale or strangely discolored. The sharply defined contrast between numb patches and untouched areas created a disturbing appearance that drew fearful reactions from anyone who saw him close up. Even his eyelids became affected. They stiffened and struggled to close fully, increasing the risk of constant eye irritation and accidental damage. More alarming than the visible decay was his continuous inability to feel injuries. Attendants noticed that Baldwin frequently cut or burned himself without realizing it. In several incidents, he sliced his hand on broken armor plates or metal fittings, only noticing after blood soaked through his gloves. Records describe a moment when Baldwin sustained a deep cut that reached bone, yet he continued writing documents as if nothing had happened. Baldwin's rapid collapse also contradicted every reference the physicians had. Others insisted that if he truly had advanced leprosy, he should already be bedridden and mentally impaired. Yet Baldwin's mind remained sharp, and his vital organs showed no signs of weakening. He could make strategic decisions, debate with advisors, and command armies with full concentration. His ability to ride into battle created even more confusion. Contemporary accounts describe him gripping the reins with twisted fingers, guiding his horse with precision despite the numbness spreading through his limbs. These contradictions created a medical paradox. Baldwin displayed every physical sign of a rotting infection, but retained the strength, clarity, and resilience of a healthy commander. His symptoms appeared in irregular waves. Some areas decayed rapidly while others slowed or partially healed. This unpredictability caused panic among his medical staff, who admitted they could not classify the disease. It matched no single condition they recognized. It behaved like multiple diseases fused into one. As Baldwin weakened, his symptoms reached an extreme level that forces the kingdom to confront the reality of their decaying king. The death that didn't add up. In Baldwin's final years, his condition entered a phase that terrified even those who had grown accustomed to his deformities. His eyesight deteriorated rapidly until shadows and shapes became indistinguishable. Soon he could no longer see anything at all. Attendants had to carry him into council meetings, placing him upright in a ceremonial chair so the kingdom would not appear leaderless to visiting envoys. Even then, observers noted that he sometimes turned his head in the wrong direction when spoken to, confirming the full loss of vision. His limbs stiffened to the point of near immobility. Servants described his arms and legs as rigid, almost wooden, and some claimed they could see bone outlines beneath thinning skin. These descriptions shocked later historians, because such extreme physical collapse usually indicated final-stage systemic infection. Yet Baldwin's mind, when he could speak, remained focused enough to give commands. Chronic infections caused a strong, sour odor that filled his chambers. Palace staff burned incense and scattered herbs across the floor, but the smell persisted, leading many to believe his body was decomposing before death. Fear spread among the attendants. Some refused to approach his bed, convinced they risked divine punishment by touching a king who appeared to be rotting alive. Others reported hearing Baldwin whisper orders in a strained voice even when he seemed too weak to lift his head. These conflicting accounts added to the uncertainty of his true condition. Physicians could not agree whether his sudden silences were caused by nerve collapse, bacterial invasion of internal organs, or simple exhaustion. Their uncertainty meant no one could determine the precise moment when Baldwin crossed the line between life and death. When he finally died, the official report listed only the disease as the cause. No details, no descriptions, and no medical notes were released. The vague wording created immediate suspicion. Rumors began circulating that his body decomposed with unnatural speed. Some argued that his death had occurred earlier than reported and was concealed for political reasons. Others believed he suffered an internal infection that caused rapid breakdown of tissues, a terrifying idea in a kingdom already shaken by fear of divine punishment. Soon, darker stories emerged. A few chroniclers recorded claims that Baldwin might not have been entirely dead when he was placed in his limestone sarcophagus. These accounts described small movements or faint sounds noticed by attendants during the hurried burial ritual. While most historians treat these claims as exaggerated reactions to fear and superstition, the rumors persisted because of the rush surrounding his funeral. Political pressure demanded a fast burial. The kingdom was unstable, factions were preparing to fight for control, and any sign of weakness risked collapse. Baldwin was entombed quickly, with minimal examination, leaving a trail of unanswered questions about his true manner of death. These unresolved contradictions, rapid decay, conflicting medical observations, and rumors of premature burial ensured the mystery surrounding Baldwin IV remained alive for centuries. Centuries later, the tomb that held these unresolved secrets would be uncovered, igniting a new wave of controversy and scientific interest. The tomb that scientists should never have opened. In the 2024, renovation workers near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre uncovered a sealed chamber that was not listed on any modern map. The chamber was hidden beneath a layer of collapsed stone that had not been disturbed for centuries. Inside it stood an unmarked sarcophagus made of worn limestone. Faint Latin carvings ran across one side of the lid. Experts cleaned the debris carefully and realized the markings were consistent with the burial inscriptions used for Baldwin IV. This discovery shocked the archaeological team because Baldwin's exact burial location had been debated for generations. A serious argument broke out among the researchers. Some believed the tomb should never be opened because of the risk of disturbing sacred Christian remains. Others warned that old microbial material could still be active. Several scientists argued that opening the sarcophagus without preparation could expose the team to unknown pathogens. The group halted work temporarily while authorities were notified. The dispute grew larger when religious authorities insisted that any investigation must follow strict religious protocols. Israeli officials argued that the discovery was under their jurisdiction. Palestinian representatives demanded involvement because the site sat within a politically sensitive zone. Every group wanted control. Every group feared the consequences of a mistake. For several days, the chamber remained sealed while negotiations took place. To ease the tension, the scientists performed external imaging tests. These scans showed unusual hotspots inside the sarcophagus. Hotspots usually indicate pockets of organic residue. However, the patterns in this case did not match normal medieval burials. The team could not confirm whether the readings came from decomposed human tissue or from microbial activity trapped for hundreds of years. The scans only increased suspicion that something strange had happened to Baldwin's remains. When the authorities finally approved the opening, the team approached the task with full protective gear. As soon as the seal broke, a strong and unpleasant smell filled the chamber. Researchers were disturbed by how powerful the odor was because remains from the 12th century should not produce such a smell. They recorded that the scent was thick, sour, and strangely persistent, suggesting that bacteria inside the tomb may have survived in some form. Inside the sarcophagus, they found bone fragments, dark residue, and clumps of partially preserved organic material. These remains were different from typical Crusader burials. The bones showed lesions that indicated nerve deterioration and chronic infection, which matched some descriptions of Baldwin's health. However, other bone patterns did not resemble classical leprosy. Some areas showed decay that spread in uneven patches, something not seen in normal cases of the disease. This confused the team and raised the possibility that Baldwin suffered from a condition that had never been correctly identified. Because of the strong smell and the unusual state of the residue, forensic experts moved the finds into isolation chambers. They treated the material as a possible biohazard. Researchers openly admitted this was the first time they had taken such precautions with medieval remains, which showed how disturbed they were by what they had uncovered. Religious groups accused the scientists of violating sacred laws and disrespecting a holy king. This caused public anger and fierce debates. For several weeks, the investigation faced threats, protests, and political pressure. Despite all of this, the scientific team continued. Baldwin's illness had puzzled historians for centuries. This was the first chance to solve the mystery. The remains were prepared for the most advanced DNA testing ever attempted on a medieval body. The DNA that broke every rule of medieval microbiology. The DNA investigation began the moment Baldwin's bone fragments were placed inside the laboratory's sealed analysis chambers. Scientists expected to confirm simple medieval leprosy, but the first round of tests delivered a shock. The samples contained Mycobacterium leprae. This was the known leprosy bacterium associated with Baldwin for centuries. The presence of this bacterium seemed to confirm the traditional diagnosis. However, the team noticed something troubling in the patterns of genetic decay. The bacterium showed irregularities in its DNA strands. These irregularities did not match normal medieval strains. When researchers performed deeper sequencing, they discovered a second bacterium hidden inside the degraded tissue. This second organism had mutated in ways never recorded in medieval or modern references. It showed a genetic signature that suggested it had adapted to survive in nerve tissue instead of skin. The mutated strain carried markers that allowed it to attach directly to nerve cells and destroy them far faster than Mycobacterium leprae normally would. The team ran the tests repeatedly to rule out contamination. Each test produced the same result. Baldwin had been infected with two different bacterial strains at the same time. Historians were stunned. No other medieval skeleton from the Crusader states had ever shown signs of such a dual infection. The presence of the second mutated strain explained Baldwin's early loss of sensation and rapid nerve decay. It also confirmed that physicians of the time had been right when they said his condition did not match ordinary leprosy. The mutated organism attacked nerves in a way that made classical symptoms appear at unnatural speed. This discovery alone would have changed the scientific understanding of medieval disease. However, the findings did not end there. Human DNA sequencing began next. The team extracted fragments of Baldwin's genetic material from preserved sections of bone. When they analyzed the immune response genes, they found unusual weaknesses. Baldwin carried several markers linked to poor resistance to bacterial infections. These markers made it harder for his body to control invasive microbes. This meant that even a mild infection could overwhelm him faster than it would affect a healthy person. Scientists believe this vulnerability played a major role in the severe infections recorded in historical accounts. The biggest surprise came during the analysis of Baldwin's nerve-related genes. Researchers identified a mutation strongly associated with Charcot-Marie tooth disease. This is a hereditary neuropathy that damages nerves in the hands and feet and causes numbness during childhood. The mutation explained Baldwin's inability to feel injuries long before he showed signs of infection. It meant his childhood symptoms had a genetic cause separate from any disease he later contracted. His body had been vulnerable from birth. The mutated bacterial strain found in the tomb likely entered a body already weakened by hereditary neuropathy. The bacteria targeted Baldwin's fragile nerves and destroyed them at extreme speed. This combination created a condition with elements of genetic nerve decay and severe infection. It did not resemble any known medical case from medieval or modern records. Scientists concluded that Baldwin's illness was not leprosy alone. It was a devastating overlap of a genetic nerve disorder and a mutated infection that exploited his vulnerabilities. This finally explained why his symptoms were confusing, contradictory, and medically impossible for centuries. Experts concluded that this mixture of mutated bacteria and inherited nerve damage was not simply unusual but almost impossible. The chances of these conditions striking the same person at the same time were described as nearly zero. This made Baldwin's survival into adulthood a medical shock. It also meant that his illness was not a symbol of punishment or divine judgment, as medieval people once believed. It was a brutal accident of biology that reshaped the fate of an entire kingdom. The discovery ended centuries of speculation and closed one of the darkest medical mysteries in medieval history. What do you think about the DNA result? Comment down below.